You're listening to Blackpool Church Podcast. Join us for our Sunday gatherings to make friends, explore faith and encounter God. Visit our website, blackpool.church. This is the Talk Archive.
Voice left. I believe that God has something important for us, and so I'll just use whatever voice I've got to try and share, and we'll trust that the Lord will do the rest. Maybe could you just pray for a moment, actually? Okay, so yesterday, Luca and I were hanging out in the morning, and we didn't have loads of plans in the morning, so we thought we'd go on a little bit of a trip. And we went on a trip to Chorley. I'd not been to Chorley before, so we thought we'd do that. And when we got there, I was pushing Luca around in a buggy, and he fell asleep. And so I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do? Well, I've got a sleeping 2-year-old in the buggy, and I thought, what I could do is I could go to an optician's. I've been meaning to get my eyes tested and maybe look at some new glasses. And I thought, well, now's as good a time as any. Saw this optician's that were looking pretty quiet. And so I thought, hey, let's give this a go. So we went in and, eye test, very simple, gave me a prescription, etc. And then I thought, well, look, I've got a little bit more time. Maybe I'll try on some glasses. That's always fun. And, I tried on the really big chunky ones, and I tried on the tiny little intellectual ones and the hipster ones, and then I tried on a really expensive pair of Swiss glasses, as of course you would, I'm never going to buy them, but I thought I'd give it a go. And then I thought, well, okay, I'm probably not going to buy any, I'll just go at this point. Went for a bit of a walk, went back home. Now, fast forward a couple of hours, and I'm at home, and I do that thing where I can't find my glasses, but they're basically in the most obvious place you could think of. So I look around, I check my bedside table, no glasses, check the sink, no glasses, check the mantelpiece in the living room, no glasses. And then I realise, of course, I'm wearing my glasses at this point, right? And I thought, well, I'll take them off. I don't know why, I thought I'll take them off and I'll just have a look at them. And as I took them off and looked at them, I realised that I wasn't wearing my normal glasses. I was wearing... these. What do you think? Some nice, expensive Swiss glasses I was wearing. And of course, what I realised is that I'd effectively stolen a pair of glasses from the shop. And, they'd of course stolen a pair of my glasses as well, on the shelf. And I guess I'll have to figure that out this week. Now, I'll tell you that story for one reason. And the reason is because I want you to know that's quite easy to believe something that isn't true. So every detail of that story is completely untrue. None of it's true. I've never been to Chorley still. I would like to go at some point, but I've never been. Yesterday morning, I wasn't hanging out with Luca. Nick was hanging out with Luca. These aren't expensive Swiss glasses. These don't even have glass in them. These are just frames from Specsavers. From Powerline. They cost £1.50. And when we're lied to, when somebody tells us something that isn't true, all sorts of different things happen. Firstly, it's demoralising when we're lied to, because we start to question our own ability to tell what's true and what's false, and that challenges something within us. Secondly, it's frustrating when we're lied to. Like we think, why on earth have I given this person so much time if they're going to tell me things that aren't true? Why on earth have I spent time listening to Andy telling stupid stories about a place he's never even been to? It's frustrating. Thirdly, it reduces trust. We think, well, how do I know that other people aren't lying to me and telling me things that aren't true? I might think, well, how many more of Andy's stories that I've already heard or will go on to hear might be untrue? You don't need to worry too much about that. It's, well, less than half. But can we just be honest for a moment? I mean, can we just be honest enough to recognize that even though we know all sorts of negative consequences of lying, even though we know a load of different reasons why it would be a bad idea to lie, could we just be a bit honest coming into this new year and recognize that we sort of do it sometimes? Like sometimes we lie, or we mislead people on purpose, which has the same ethics as lying, of course. And there's all sorts of different ways in which we might do this. Hands up if you've ever lied to your boss. Anybody? Keep your hands up. Just looking for my staff team here. And I can see you guys as well. Yeah. You know, maybe you kind of recognize the thing. This is the one I would go with. It's like, oh yeah, no, I totally do remember that thing you asked me to do. And I've done it, of course. But I just don't have it on me. So like the moment I get home, I'm going to send this thing over to you. Anybody have that? Or maybe like when it's the hottest day of the year. Everybody else seems to get sick when it's cold. But for you, you have this unusual thing. When it's like a really amazing, beautiful day outside, you're calling up your doctor. I don't even have to do a fake impression at this point. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm kind of sick today. So I don't think I can come in. Hands up, maybe if you've ever lied to your children or your parents. Could that be a thing? Maybe somebody, the parents would be like, oh no, I have no idea about that. I'm sure that wasn't me. I don't remember that. And if we're lying to our children, it might be like, yeah, that sounds like a brilliant idea. Unfortunately, we can't do that today. But I'm totally going to bear that in mind because I think maybe we'll do that next weekend. That might be the lie. Could we just get a bit more honest as well? Do we lie to our spouses, partners, boyfriends, girlfriends? Could that be a thing? We might be honest and say, I think me and Nick know that occasionally we lie to each other. Like we know that sometimes we lie to each other. Now, if there's anybody who hasn't put their hand up yet, can we just point at them and call them a liar? That's fine. Maybe that could be an option. Here's the thing. Even though we know that lying damages relationships, each of us find opportunities to mislead people or to avoid the truth. But the Bible calls us to be people who build our lives firmly on the truth, who prioritize the truth, who prioritize speaking it with love, who love following Jesus, the way, the truth, and the life. And so today, we're thinking a bit about honesty. The topic I've gone with is, can I be honest? And I want to read you a passage which is all about truth and falsehood from Matthew's Gospel. We're in Matthew chapter 7, and I'm starting at verse 50. So Jesus says this, watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. So, do you be able to?
Yeah. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash.
Thanks, Sam. So today I want to talk about my 5 favourite lies and how to stop telling them. And if I can just jump in on my first lie is, it's no big deal. Can everybody say that for me? It's no big deal.
No big deal.
Okay, now this is a lie that you could say to somebody else, but I think it starts mostly with us telling it to ourselves, speaking it to ourselves in our hearts. See, in one way or another, at different times, we all want to think of ourselves as, generally speaking, a good person. In a bit, we'll come across what happens if you don't carry any sense of self-esteem or self-worth, and it's very damaging. But most of us want to build some sense of esteem, self-confidence, self-worth, self-righteousness even. But then the question is, well, what happens when inevitably we do something wrong? Well, that risks our sense of self-confidence and self-esteem being damaged. Maybe we don't turn out to be quite as good a person as we thought we would be. And most of us aren't under the impression that we're perfect. And so there's not really too much of a problem with doing some things wrong. But the problem would come if the things that we did were something kind of big. If it was a big deal. Like we could weather all sorts of small wrongs and we would still be in that middle territory of not perfect, but still generally pretty good. But if we were to do something that was a big deal, well, then we'd have a problem on our hands. And so then, when we do something catastrophic, when we do something kind of awful, even if it felt small, then the first defense mechanism kicks in, which is the lie. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. That protects us from our self-esteem and our self-confidence being damaged. It's like we can play out the pattern. I know I insert sin here, but insert excuse here, so it's no big deal. It's like I know that I say things about people behind their backs that I shouldn't say to their face, but I don't really mean the thing, and so it's no big deal. Or I know I periodically get drunk, but I think everybody else does that as well, and so it's no big deal. I know that I'm spending money recklessly that I don't have and don't have a plan to save, but I'll figure it out next month, and so it's no big deal. I know that I watch a bit of porn, but it's not like I'm having an affair, so it's no big deal. But Jesus has a very different way of thinking about sin. So in our passage, he said, a good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, you've heard it said, do not commit adultery. But I say to you, if anyone looks lustfully at a woman, he's already committed adultery in his heart. Jesus says, you've heard it said, do not murder. But I say to you, if anyone is angry, they're under judgment. For Jesus, the heart of the matter when it comes to sin is a matter of the heart. It's important what's going on in our hearts. And that means even things that on the surface might look like a small deal to people around us, or especially ourselves, turn out to be a big deal for Jesus. And he amplifies the issues within our hearts. Here's the truth that I don't want you to know. I often struggle to manage anger in my own life. I don't say things that I probably should have said. And then I end up building up a bit of a deficit of anger, and then it leaks out in unhealthy ways, normally to my family. I don't like that, but that's true of me. The truth that I don't want you to know is that I struggle to manage lust in my life. And I have to work hard at that so that I'm not led to be impure in my thoughts or my practice. And when we look at our sin and we say, well, that's no big deal, It's just a small thing, a surface thing. It's a lie. It is a big deal. See, my sin, my inability or unwillingness to deal with anger or lust or greed or laziness or selfishness is the reason the Son of God went to the cross. And it was kind of a big deal for him to do that. And so it must be sort of a big deal for me to have done this. Let's be honest. It's a big deal. That's number one. Number two, the second lie, is kind of the opposite. And this is, I just can't. I just can't. So sometimes the reaction, the snap reaction to understanding that our sin is a big deal is to swing in the opposite direction. Rather than trying to protect our self-confidence or self-esteem now, instead we just basically let it go completely and say, well, I guess I must just be the worst then. I must just be an awful person, unable to do any of the right things and unable to stop doing any of the wrong things. It's like, I just can't. I just can't. I give up. I throw my hands up in the air and say, I guess I can't. I must just be bound to this life. But notice again, that's not just a mindset, it's a lie. It's a lie that's being spoken over somebody. And of course, what happens when we speak that lie over ourselves is that we give up on even trying anymore. It's like, forget about it. And you can think, well, who do you think would be more interested in us giving up on fighting for a holy life? God or the enemy? And in that, you have your answer. It's a lie. Now, sometimes people come to me and they sort of share their story, and sometimes people bring this kind of sense. They'll say things like, I just feel useless. I feel like I can't achieve anything. I feel like I'm worthless. I feel like I can't get free of this. I feel like I can't start turning this thing around. And what I would often say to people in that situation is stuff like, oh no, that's not true, you're amazing, you're fantastic, you'll do all this stuff, and I always like that you do this, that and the other, and let's hang out more or whatever. And all of that's true, right, and hopefully encouraging and helpful. But what I've started saying more often than not is, as well, is that you need to repent. You need to repent of speaking a lie over a good part of God's creation, yourself. That this lie of I can't is damaging to something that God has made, that he thinks is significant, important, and responsible for modeling his image in the world. C.S. Lewis makes this point by talking about different levels of courts. So, in any legal system, you have the sort of low-level courts, like a magistrate or something. And then if you don't like the decision in the magistrate's court, then you can sort of bump it up progressively to more and more senior courts until you get the Supreme Court or the Court of Human Rights or whatever it is. And C.S. Lewis says it's the same when we come to thinking about ourselves, forgiving ourselves, speaking over ourselves. If we were to say something like, well, no, I can't be forgiven for this thing. Or no, I don't have this worth or this value. What we're doing is we're saying that something God has said could be challenged in a higher court, and that higher court will be our court. We will be able to make a higher judgment than God's judgment, the thing that he's already spoken. And of course, that's nonsense. God is the senior judge of senior judges. And so if he says that you're responsible for modeling his image, that you're responsible, you don't really have the authority to say, I can't. It's a lie. Okay, lie number 3. How we do? We good? Yeah, I'm sort of hoping to offend literally every person in the room today. So if you still need something, then you just let me know, and I'm coming for you. So lie number 3 is, I'm fine. I'm fine. All good, Andy. I'm rocking. Too blessed to be stressed. I woke up today. It's a good day. I'm alive. I'm here. This is a good thing. I'm fine. There's this small church in Normandy, and on the outside, it looks like just any other church, really. You've got old stone walls, stained glass windows, and the like. But if you were to go in, you could notice something really unusual about this particular church. See, on the pews in this church, there are some dark, deep red stains soaked into the wood. And they're blood stains. They've been there for decades. And that's because in World War II, around June 1944, just after D-Day, a battle took place in this little village called Angeville in Normandy in France. And it was a ferocious battle, and people were wounded and killed and injured in all sorts of different parts of this village. Fields, streets, buildings. And not quite knowing what to do, 2 medics from the 101st Airborne decided to set up a sort of makeshift field hospital in the only place that they could find that would be safe enough to do it, which was this church. And so they carried in and had carried in soldiers, not asking whether they were on one side or the other, not checking their uniforms or anything like that, but just being willing to serve and to try and put back together people who were injured and bleeding and hurting. They did that overnight, round the clock, until eventually the battle moved on and the fighting dissipated and they moved on themselves. Now at that point, the villagers and the people of the town began to rebuild what had been broken. And when they got to the church, they put back together stained glass windows and they, fixed up the chancel and all of that. And then when they came to the pews, they had an option. Either they could just sand it all back, strip it down, and then re-varnish it to make the pews look good as needed. Or, if they wanted, they could leave the bloodstains on. And they decided that they would leave the bloodstains on as an important message. It's a message that the church is supposed to be a place for bleeding people. The church is not supposed to look like the Forbes rich list. It's not supposed to look like the Royal Box at Wimbledon or Celebrity Love Island or anything like that. It's supposed to look like a makeshift field hospital for broken and hurting and bleeding people to come together and to find healing as they begin to worship Jesus in the power of the Holy Spirit. That's what's supposed to happen. But there is a powerful lie that would get in the way of that happening. The lie would be, I'm fine when I'm not fine. There'll be a lie that would stop people from being able to experience the healing that Jesus has on offer for them. And as a sort of aside here, this is why in our church we really want to prioritize prayer ministry. Because something significant can happen when a couple of people gather around you and lay hands on you and pray for the Holy Spirit to fill you. And one of the significant things that can happen is that you can experience healing, both physical and emotional and spiritual. It's possible to experience that through prayer ministry. And last week, Heather shared an absolutely brilliant word about consistency. And as part of her talk, she invited Toby and Madison to come up on stage and to recite from memory all of the names of the books of the Bible. And they did it. They smashed it, in fact. It was incredible to see these, 10-year-olds reciting 66 books by name in order in about a minute. And Heather's call was for us to become people who are consistent in reading the Bible. And then in the evening, you might remember, John took a risk. And as part of prayer ministry, he invited people to come forward and to be prayed for who would like to develop a regular habit of reading the Bible. And I was in the crush, so I might not have seen, but I'm pretty sure nobody came forward. Now, as far as I can see it, that means one of two things. Either when I say Hosea, you just instinctively know it's John. Or I'm fine, Andy. Fine. No, I'm messing with you slightly. Because obviously there's lots of good reasons to not come and be prayed for. And it's not the only reason we pray. But the point still stands that it would be a terrible idea to miss out on being prayed for by an incredible team of gifted people because you needed to pretend to be fine when you're not fine. So don't do that. Let me give you another. Lie 4 is, you're amazing. You're amazing. That's number 4. You know, it's interesting in the Bible, often the opposite of truth is lie or falsehood. But sometimes the opposite is flattery. So for instance, in Proverbs, it says this: a lying tongue hates those it hurts, and a flattering mouth works ruin. It says, wounds from a friend can be trusted, but enemy multiplies kisses. And in the passage that I read to us earlier, the false teachers, they're described as being wolves that look like sheep because they're wearing sheep's clothing. You look at them and you think, oh, they look nice, they look really fluffy and nice to hang around with, they're wonderful, they're sheep. And the point that the book is making is that one of the most tempting lies that people would fall into is simply telling people something that you know they want to hear, even if you don't believe it's true. One of the most tempting lies is to just tell somebody something you know they want to hear, even if you don't believe it's true. And for me, I think this is probably the most tempting of all of the things that not today you might be able to tell. And there are all sorts of reasons that we might do this. Firstly, because it's way more comfortable. The truth can be incredibly uncomfortable. To challenge somebody, to tell them something that you know they don't want to hear, it can be uncomfortable for everybody, and it's a challenging thing to know how to do it well. It can often lead to really bad unintended consequences, and so often it feels easier to not do it. Secondly, it's quite useful to flatter people. If you just consistently tell people things you know they want to hear, tell them they're an amazing person without really thinking about why, then they'll like you. And if they like you, then they might do things for you, and that would be useful, but not good. And thirdly, it's tempting because it feels kind. I mean, often it just feels really kind and nice to flatter people and to say nice things about them. It feels like encouragement. But it's important to know that there is a distinction between encouragement and flattery. See, encouragement has actual substance and content to it. If you encourage Sam by telling him he's awesome, and he was to ask me why, then I could say something like, it's because you really kindly read the Bible for me and it's brilliant. So that's encouragement, because it has actual substance. But if somebody just tells you, you're amazing, you're fantastic, and you say, oh, why? And then they're like, well, you just are. Well, that's probably flattery. It doesn't really have any substance to it. Ironically, the kind thing to do is often to tell people the truth that they don't want to hear. And I'm incredibly grateful for many people in our church, some people in this room, some people even really recently, who've been kind enough to share with me a truth that they know I didn't want to hear, to help me grow and be sharpened and shaped into a better leader and to lead our church better. It's an incredibly kind thing to do, to risk a friendship with somebody to help them grow. And I'm grateful for the people who do that. I want to get better at doing that. If I'm going to do it, I need to deal with this lie. Last one. Just one more. And I think this is the most challenging by far. The last lie that I want to talk about is the lie, Lord, Lord. So in our passage, it says this: not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? And then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. I mean, that is phenomenally challenging as a passage. Jesus is painting a picture of people who on the final day meet him face to face, fully expecting to enter his kingdom. And they're not expecting it just because they're optimistic people. They've got a good track record of doing some pretty remarkable things, most of which I haven't done. And on the basis of that, they're thinking, I guess I'm going to be there. Not only that, they know who Jesus is. They recognize him, and at least they call him Lord. And then what happens is, Jesus says, I have no idea who you are. I have no idea. And that's frightening, right? Because I would think of myself as somebody who calls Jesus Lord. And so then I've got to try and figure out, am I like this kind of person who calls Jesus Lord? Or am I one of the other ones? And it hinges on this lie. The lie is, of course, that they call him Lord, but they don't mean it. They call him Lord, Lord, but they haven't lived as though he's Lord. See, when it comes to following Jesus, that's the only option. The only option is to call him Lord and to live like that's what he is. Not a boss who gets you kind of 9 to 5, but then the rest of the time you can do what you want. Not somebody you're in some kind of contractual relationship with where they give you some things and you give them some other things in exchange. Not a business partner, a Lord. Somebody who you owe entire allegiance to. Every bit of yourself. There can be no holding on to some control when it comes to following Jesus. There can be no delegating permission for Jesus to do certain parts of your life, or even delegating all permission of your life but still holding on to authority or ownership over it. There can be no half-hearted following when it comes to Jesus. He demands, Lord, and has to mean it. And so, as we come into land, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to be somebody who loves the truth. Blaise Pascal once said, truth is so obscure in these times, and falsehood so established, that unless we love the truth, we cannot know it. And Jesus once said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. See, there will be moments in your life, there will probably be even moments this week, where it is more convenient or comforting to lie. There will be moments when your temptation is to minimize your sin or to amplify your failings. Times when you could hide your woundedness. There'll be times when you'll be tempted to let your yes be no and your no be yes, to say the nice thing rather than the kind thing, but you must not do it. You must prioritize the truth. And one truth above all, which is recognizing that Jesus is Lord. Should we stand? We're going to pray.